I read it all the time in Reddit. Why isn't God doing miracles today? If God really existed, we'd see some evidence of it. If God really wanted a relationship with me, he'd talk to me and appear to me, just as he did for Moses and Paul. If he did that for me, I'd believe in him. But just like in the days of Jesus, people think that seeing a sign is all it would take. The Bible shows us that audible conversations with God don't make people believers or even make the world a better place. Adam and Eve had audible conversations with God, and yet they turned right around and disobeyed him. God had an audible conversation with Cain. That didn't help a bit. God spoke to various kings in Genesis, but that didn't make the world a better place. Everyone who knew Jesus was having an audible conversation with God, and they turned around and crucified him. It turns out that God making himself obvious by audible conversations and even by miraculous events doesn't have a ton of effect on people. The people of the Exodus saw miracle after miracle, and that experience changed very few hearts. Thousands of people knew Jesus, but by the time he died, he had few followers. What we learn from the Bible and from life experiences is that being convinced in the mind and the heart are what matter, not hearing voices and seeing miracles. I've said to an atheist, suppose God appeared to you right now and you knew it was God, and he did a miracle right in front of you and you knew it was a miracle, and then he confirmed it by whatever measure you demanded. Would that convince you? The answer I get is always the same. Nope. I would still think I was dreaming, hallucinating, or delusional. You see, they ask for a sign, and then admit that seeing a sign would not make a difference. It's an old question. People made the same request of Jesus in Matthew 6, 1-4, which is odd because he was constantly doing miracles. The Israelites had tested God back in the wilderness. That's thousands of years ago. It's an age-old challenge. Convince me. Change my mind. I would turn to God if he would just prove himself and the evidence were convincing. If you want me to believe something so extraordinary, you need to churn out some pretty extraordinary evidence. So they asked Jesus for a sign at the beginning of Matthew 16. And he replied something on the order of, here's your sign. Red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky at morn, sailors take warn. Wasn't what they were after. He basically says, you know the signs in the sky, but you don't know the signs of the times. You can see a storm coming in the clouds, but you can't see a storm coming in your life, or in your country, or in your world. Jesus refused to give them a sign. He refused to be viewed as a traveling magic show. He also knew that their insincerity and hardness of heart would prevent them from believing anything he said or did anyway, which had already been established by his multiple miracles and their lack of belief. And then in Matthew 16:4, he says they won't get a sign, quote, except the sign of Jonah, unquote. Interesting. Jonah was like these people, rebellious, petty, sulking, angry, self-serving, and with a skewed attitude. The sign of Jonah, of course, was Jesus' death and resurrection, still future at the time when Jesus said this. It wasn't what they were asking for, but it was exactly the pièce de résistance they were demanding. There would be no lightning from the sky or water turned to blood, and Jesus would not conform to their request for a trick on demand. His death and resurrection would be a confirmation of his identity and his work, and at the same time a condemnation of their apostasy and unbelief, because even if they saw somebody rise from the dead, they wouldn't believe it. Now remember, these are stories about people. What we learn here is that there's no problem with having a skeptical mind. or a doubting mind, or an inquisitive mind. But there is no help for the closed mind. You can only help people who want to be helped. You can only teach people who are open to be taught. There is nothing so impenetrable as a closed mind, and it often has little to do with the evidence at hand. Let's talk about this.